Hey, welcome to a new video. The coast of Kent, England, lies a remarkable World War II wreck, a Dornier de 17Z2, work number 1160, code 5K+AR. On August 26, 1940, during the Battle of Britain, the aircraft was shot down while taking part in an attack on RAF airfields in Essex. It suffered damage to both engines, the cockpit, and glazing, lost its formation above the clouds, and attempted a forced landing on the Goodwin Sands. It then overturned into the water, sank and lay for decades buried under shifting sand and silt. Sand can both protect and conceal wrecks, so parts occasionally became visible. In 2008, divers took photographs, and later sonar surveys confirmed the aircraft's identity. In June 2013, after months of fundraising, archaeological work, and careful planning around long tides, the RAF Museum raised the Dornier from the seabed. The find is exceptional. This is likely the only intact Tu-17 bomber in the world. Most others survive only as fragments or were destroyed long ago. Nearly all remaining examples were scrapped, dismantled, or lost after the war.
Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video.
Off Crete, near Agia Pelagia, rests the wreck of a German Messerschmitt Bf-109, one of World War II's best-known single-engine fighters. The aircraft lies about 2,625 feet, or 800 meters from shore, at roughly 78 feet or 24 meters depth. The Bf-109 was the Luftwaffe's iconic fighter, and the most produced, with nearly 34,000 built. Yet only a handful fly today. Another story centers on a German-built machine that made a belly landing on May 5, 1943. Feldwebel Victor Petermann of JG-52 was forced down after Soviet fighters damaged the cooling system. He walked 4 days back to base, shortly after scoring his 30th through 30th second victories. That aircraft was later meticulously restored by Meyer Motors in Eschbach, with former Luftwaffe pilots helping ensure authenticity. The Daimler-Benz DB605 engine adds a twist. It came from a German aircraft that mistakenly landed in neutral Switzerland. The pilot destroyed the airframe, but the engine was saved and spent decades in storage. The restored Bf-109 now carries the markings of Hauptmann Klaus Queit-Faslam, commander of JG-3 Udet during the war. In May 2012, an employee of a Polish oil company discovered an almost time capsule-like Curtiss P-40 Kitty Hawk in Egypt's western desert. The aircraft crashed in June 1942 and lay nearly 70 years largely untouched by the sand. This Kitty Hawk is believed to have belonged to No. 260 Squadron RAF and was likely flown by Flight Sergeant Dennis Copping, who vanished while ferrying a damaged aircraft between bases for repair and made a forced landing. The cockpit instruments, wings, and fuselage remained largely intact, but the pilot was never found. At first discovery, the guns and ammunition were still in place. Egyptian authorities later removed them for safety. Many instruments were still readable, and even the identification plates survived. Weathering and damage from flak in the landing were evident, yet the overall condition of the airframe was considered excellent. Plans called for the Kitty Hawk to be displayed at the Al Alamein Military Museum. As both memorial and technical snapshot, the wreck shows how aircraft were used, lost, and sometimes forgotten in the harsh desert war of North Africa. In March 1954, a North American P-51D Mustang vanished over the Appalachians during a training flight from Michigan to Charlotte, North Carolina. The aircraft was serial number 44-73077 on a routine exercise over varied terrain. The pilot, First Lieutenant Robert Brannon Bob Smith of Lansing, Michigan, served with the 172nd Fighter Squadron of the Michigan Air National Guard. The Mustang never arrived, and radio contact ceased. Decades later, hikers in the remote Beartown wilderness of Tazewell County, Virginia, found scattered metal in the forest. The wreck was confirmed near the crest of Chestnut Ridge, and the serial number was later reconfirmed during a local search for parts and fragments. Over time, the forest reclaimed the site, with ferns and rhododendrons growing through the airframe, an iconic World War II fighter lying unnoticed among trees. The location is hard to reach in rugged terrain at nearly 1,430 feet or 1,430 meters, where photos still show fuselage sections and landing gear amid moss and leaves. A sober reminder of the crash that killed Lieutenant Smith. Weather and terrain likely played a role. Low cloud and poor visibility probably confused navigation. On October 9, 1944, a Vought F-4 U-1 Corsair, serial JT-693, flown by Sub-Lieutenant Charles Henry Schwenger of the Royal Canadian Navy, made a forced landing in the mudflats of Lough Foyle near Ballykelly, Londonderry, Northern Ireland, due to an engine fire during a training flight from RNAS Eglinton. The pilot was uninjured and walked from the wreck across the mudbanks to shore. The aircraft could not be recovered at the time because the soft mud suctioned around the fuselage, making salvage dangerous and difficult. Over the years, mud and water preserved parts of the airframe, and at low tide, remnants of the fuselage, wings, and structure are still visible. Local historians and the Shackleton Aviation Museum have expressed interest in recovering components, ideally before further deterioration. Exposure and corrosion, especially in salt or brackish water, and the fragile nature of mud-bound wrecks make full recovery extremely challenging. At low tide, the wreck re-emerges, its corroded frame and twisted metal showing the ravages of time. Over the years, this silent relic has become a favorite subject for photographers and history enthusiasts. When the tide retreats, the site offers an almost cinematic glimpse into the past, the silhouette stark against the surf, frozen where it came down decades ago. The Heinkel HE-115 was a versatile German twin-engine seaplane used for torpedo missions, reconnaissance, mine-laying, and anti-shipping patrols. In Lake Limingen, in Norway's Nord-Trøndelag, a well-known wreck lies at about 623 feet, or 190 meters depth, hidden for over 70 years. Local accounts spoke of an aircraft that became stranded in April 1940 during the invasion, with engine trouble or other complications at play. Later reports say the Heinkel landed on the ice-covered lake on April 22nd or 23rd, 1940, then sank after it could no longer take off. Years of sonar surveys showed unnatural shapes, and in 2013, divers confirmed the aircraft's presence. The find matters because the He-115 is rare. Only 138 were built, and few reasonably complete examples survive. The great depth in cold freshwater aided preservation, though corrosion and biological activity remain factors. There's a parallel. In 2012, a HE-115B/C variant, Verk number 2398, was raised from Hafrsfjord. That aircraft is being restored at the Flyhistorisk Museum Sola, offering a close look at both history and engineering. Together, these discoveries show how aircraft were deployed, lost, and decades later, sometimes returned from the depths for today's public and researchers. One of World War II's most remarkable underwater wrecks is B-17F. Flying Fortress 41-24, 521, known as Blackjack, and Joker's Wild. The bomber flew with the U.S. 5th Air Force in the Southwest Pacific. On July 11, 1943, it departed Port Moresby, New Guinea, for a mission, was damaged, and couldn't make it back. The crew ditched at sea near Boga Boga on the north coast of Papua New Guinea. In December 1986, Australian divers Rodney Pierce, David Pennefather, and Bruce Johnson found the wreck at about 147 feet, or 45 meters, on a sandy bottom beside a coral reef. The nose was crushed by the impact, but much of the aircraft remained strikingly intact. Ammunition, mission gear, and structure were still aboard, making it one of the best-preserved B-17 wrecks in the Pacific. Thanks to underwater preservation, Blackjack offers a rare window into combat damage, the realities of a sea ditching, and what endures after decades underwater. The Yonkers Ju-87. Stuka, infamous for its wailing sirens and precision dive bombing, survives today in only a handful of wrecks. Off the Croatian island of Žirja lies an exceptional example. In 2014, fishermen's reports and fishing ground checks led to a discovery. Since then, the Stuka has rested at roughly 90 feet, or 28 meters, on a sandy bottom. The engine is missing, but the airframe sits upright on its landing gear, as if it settled gently and stayed put. The wings, fuselage, and cockpit outline are largely intact, and the engine lay near the wreck for a time. This Ju-87R2 is considered one of the best-preserved Stuka wrecks in the world. The site is protected cultural heritage in Croatia, with clear rules to prevent looting and damage. Visibility is often good, and the site is reachable for experienced, permitted sport divers, though depth, current, and corrosion remain risks, hence strict limits for dive centers. Elsewhere in the Mediterranean, more Stuka wrecks exist, and a few have been recovered, including an aircraft from Rhodes in 2006. None, however, match the exceptional condition of the Žirje Ju-87. Lady Be Good is one of the best-known cases of a World War II aircraft that vanished, was forgotten, and later rediscovered. The bomber was a consolidated B-24D Liberator, serial 41-24301 of the U.S. Army Air Force's 376th Bomb Group in Libya. On April 4, 1943, Lady Be Good flew a night raid on Naples and began the return along a familiar route. In the darkness, navigation likely went awry. After radio contact was lost, the aircraft flew too far south into the Libyan desert. Fuel ran out and the crew bailed out. Lieutenant John Waravka died when his parachute failed. The others headed north with little water, surviving about 8 days before succumbing to exhaustion and dehydration. In 1960, the remains of 8 men were found. One crewman was never located. The wreck itself was discovered in November 1958 by British Oil Survey aircraft, about 440,000 miles, or 708 kilometers south of Soluk, Libya. The B-24 lay strikingly intact, with nearly all propellers feathered, instruments readable, and a structure preserved by the arid desert air. Off Crete, divers found a largely intact wreck of a German Arado R-196. A related wreck exists near Heracleia in Greece. Technical divers located an aircraft in Calathis Bay on Crete's north coast, at roughly 209 feet or 64 meters depth. The Arado 196 was a German float plane widely used for maritime reconnaissance, patrol, and liaison, operating from ships or coastal seaplane bases. Pilots praised its handling and reliability, though it wasn't heavily armed or particularly fast. A separate account describes an R196A-3 with code D1+EH that a fishing trawler found near Heracleia in 1982 at about 300 feet, or 91 meters. It was later moved to shallower water, around 36 feet or 11 meters, where it now lies inverted. The fuselage and wings are largely preserved, turning the wreck into a dive attraction, with much of the airframe intact despite corrosion and marine life. Researchers value the site for archaeology, history, and ecology. These finds illuminate air operations over the Mediterranean and the crucial tasks seaplanes performed. The Henschel HS-129 was a German twin-engine ground attack aircraft, specifically designed to destroy heavily armored Soviet tanks like the T-34. It was primarily deployed on the Eastern Front between 1942 and 1945. The design featured a compact cockpit protected by a steel bathtub to shield the pilot from ground fire, though this protection resulted in a cramped workspace with poor visibility. Early models were underpowered due to weak Argus AS410 engines, but the later B-series received stronger French Gnome-Rhone engines. Eventually, the HS-129 was equipped with a massive 75mm BK 7.5 cannon, adapted from the PAK-40 anti-tank gun. Only 25 aircraft could carry this weapon configuration due to its enormous recoil and weight. After brief deployment in North Africa, it was mainly used on the Eastern Front, where its anti-tank capability was most needed. Despite its impressive firepower, the aircraft remained vulnerable to enemy fighters and often required air cover to operate effectively. The Mitsubishi G4M, nicknamed Betty by the Allies, was Japan's principal twin-engine bomber in World War II. Renowned for its long range and notorious for its lack of armor and non-self-sealing fuel tanks, it earned the grim moniker Flying Lighter. Many were lost during Operation Hailstone in February 1944, when U.S. forces launched a massive carrier-based strike on the Japanese stronghold at Truk Lagoon in Micronesia. Dozens of G4Ms were destroyed on the ground or shot down as they tried to flee, scattering remains across the lagoon's turquoise depths. Today, multiple G4M wrecks rest underwater, remarkably well preserved by the lagoon's calm, low-oxygen environment. Divers can explore ghostly outlines of fuselage and wings, with cockpit glazing, gun positions, and radial engines visible beneath coral growth. One wreck lies almost perfectly intact, upright on the sandy bottom, its sleek profile and glazed nose immediately recognizable. The site offers a moving window into Japan's air arm in the Pacific and the impact of Operation Hailstone. Overgrown with coral and anemones, these aircraft have become underwater memorials where history and sea life meet. To this day, the Ilyushin I-2 Stormovik remains one of the most mass-produced military aircraft in history. Joseph Stalin famously declared that these planes were as essential to the Red Army as air and bread. Thousands were built during World War II to fight the Nazis. This 11.5-meter-long aircraft, heavily armored, earned the nickname Flying Tank among enemy troops. The propeller-driven fighter carried a pilot and rear gunner, with a wingspan of nearly 15 meters. One wreck was recovered from a lake in Russia. The aircraft had been shot down on August 22, 1943, during a German attack near the Norwegian border. Captain Alexander Kalichev, then 34 years old, managed to safely land the damaged plane on the lake. Years later, the wreck was retrieved by Wings of Victory, a Russian organization that restores historical aircraft. Using floats, the plane was brought to the surface and is now being transported for restoration. The B-24, J Liberator. Tulsa American symbolized wartime industry and sacrifice. Built in Tulsa, it was the final B-24 to leave the Douglas aircraft plant before war's end, partly funded by wage withholding contributions from factory workers, giving the bomber a personal bond with the community. On December 17, 1944, Tulsa American flew a mission over German-occupied Czechoslovakia. On the return, the formation faced heavy Luftwaffe opposition. Hit and down 2 engines, the aircraft lost altitude. Over the Adriatic Sea, the crew tried to reach the Allied outpost on the island of Vis, off the Dalmatian coast. When land proved unreachable, Pilot Lieutenant Eugene Ford ordered the crew to bail out. 7 of the 10 survived and were rescued by local fishermen and Allied patrols. Ford and 2 others died when the aircraft sank, its wreck hidden for more than 60 years. In 2010, Croatian divers found it at about 134 feet or 41 meters near Vis. A fuselage, wings, and engines, coral-clad but clearly recognizable. Later missions by the USDPAA supported identification and repatriation of missing crew members. The Focke-Wulf Triebflugel is without a doubt one of Nazi Germany's most bizarre and futuristic aviation projects. Designed in 1944 during the desperate final phase of the war, this vertical takeoff and landing aircraft was classified as a Wunderwaffe, or wonder weapon, intended to turn the tide of the conflict. Instead of fixed wings, the Triebflugel had 3 enormous rotor wings rotating around the fuselage, with ramjet engines mounted on their tips. This rotation generated both lift and thrust, allowing the aircraft to take off vertically, ideal at a time when airfields were constantly under attack. Once airborne, the craft would tilt horizontally to engage enemy bombers with 4 planned 1.2-inch or 30mm cannons. However, the design remained purely theoretical. No prototype was ever built or tested. The Triebflugel stayed a paper concept, a bizarre blend of visionary engineering and desperate fantasy. Deep in Snowdonia National Park lies Llyn Dulyn, known in Welsh lore as Black Lake or the Lake of the Sorceress, with a dark aviation history. On November 11, 1944, Remembrance Day, a Douglas C-47B Skytrain Dakota. 3 of the U.S. Army Air Forces crashed here. Lieutenant William McQuaid was flying paratroopers of the 17th Airborne Division to exercises on the moorland when mist and low cloud proved fatal. The aircraft struck the cliffs of Craig 4 at about 1,200 feet or 366 meters elevation, roughly 800 feet or 244 meters above the lake. The impact shattered the fuselage, scattering parts across the ledge and into the dark water. 4 aboard were killed: McQuaid, co-pilot Donald Wilson, John Clark, and Robert Miller, while 6 survivors waited on the slope for rescue by RAF mountain teams. After 8 crashes since 1940, Llyn Dulyn became one of Snowdonia's accident black spots, with more than 50 deadly training wrecks across the area, while debris lay submerged for decades. In July 2021, heat lowered the water level and wreckage reappeared. Twisted propeller, shards of aluminum, old lines, sparking renewed attention from hikers and drone pilots who shared fresh images. The Bristol Beaufighter was a British twin-engine aircraft that played a crucial role in World War II. Renowned for its versatility, it served as a long-range fighter, ground attack aircraft, and torpedo bomber. It was one of the first planes equipped with airborne interception radar, making it effective against German nighttime air raids early in the war. Multiple Beaufighter wrecks have been discovered underwater, particularly in the Mediterranean region. One notable wreck was found off the coast of Cephalonia in Greece, where the plane was shot down by German anti-aircraft fire on July 19, 1944. Maritime archaeologists conducted research into the wreck and its historical context. In another case, parts of the Beaufighter were discovered near St. Julian's Bay in Malta. That wreck has become a popular diving spot for military history enthusiasts. In 1999, divers were granted permission by British authorities to recover parts of the aircraft for display in a local museum. The jungles of Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands hold countless traces of the Pacific Front, where the Allies fought fiercely against Japan. Among the stories stands the Douglas S.B.D. Dauntless, naval bravery and mettle, with perforated dive breaks and bombs that turned the tide at Midway and Guadalcanal. On January 14, 1944, SBD-5 Dauntless lifted off from USS Natama Bay. The pilot was Lieutenant Walter Wood with gunner Harry Baker, tasked with strikes near Empress Augusta Bay. Mid-mission, engine trouble struck, likely oil loss in the Wright R-1820 Cyclone. Wood turned toward land and bellied into an isolated mangrove swamp some 50 miles or 80 kilometers inland. Both men survived, evaded capture, and reached friendly lines after days with help from local people. Too damaged to recover, the Dauntless was stripped of instruments and lay for decades beneath grass and monsoon water as its aluminum weakened. In February 2024, a team of local conservationists led by villager Thomas Kokon found the wreck during a bird survey near the Owen Stanley Range. Amid the greenery, faded ensign markings and a battered propeller emerged, quiet clues to the aircraft's final glide. The FA-223 Drache was one of Nazi Germany's most futuristic aviation projects, and is often regarded as the world's first truly functional transport helicopter. Developed by Fokker starting in 1940, the aircraft was years ahead of its time in an era when helicopters were barely operational. With twin rotors mounted on either side of the fuselage, the Drache could take off and land vertically, allowing it to transport cargo, wounded personnel, and even vehicles over difficult terrain without the need for a runway. Its versatility made it useful for mountain rescues, transport missions, and reconnaissance, especially in areas inaccessible to conventional aircraft. However, production remained extremely limited. Allied bombings of the factories resulted in only 20 units being built. Despite the small number, the Drache set the standard for future helicopter developments worldwide. With a top speed of about 112 miles per hour or 180 kilometers per hour and a range of 435 miles or 700 kilometers, it was revolutionary for its time. Had Nazi Germany had more time to develop this technology on a larger scale, it could have radically altered the way war was fought. In the ice of northwest Greenland, the Boeing B-29 Superfortress Keybird wrote a tale of survival and overreach that still captivates aviation enthusiasts. On February 21, 1947, the 46th Reconnaissance Squadron launched from Ladd Field, Alaska, on a secret photo mission over the Arctic. Led by Lieutenant Colonel William Howell, the 11-man crew flew through blizzards and extreme cold. About 400 miles or 640 kilometers east of Thule, carburetors iced, cutting fuel to 3 engines. With the fourth faltering, Howell executed a glide landing on the frozen surface of a remote lake, later named Keybird Lake. After 3 days, a U.S. Navy PBY Catalina rescued the crew with a ski landing, and the B-29 was declared beyond recovery and left on the ice. Rediscovered in 1980, it became the focus of salvage plans. In 1994, a private expedition ferried in parts and rebuilt the engines on site. In June 1995, Keybird taxied across the thawing lake, until a fire ended the project. Today, the distorted fuselage rests on the tundra, the story living on in documentaries. In 1943, during intense fighting on the Eastern Front, a German Focke-Wulf 190 fighter plane crashed into a remote swampy forest near Leningrad. The pilot likely encountered enemy fire or technical failure during a mission. The aircraft vanished into the marsh and remained untouched for decades, as nature slowly reclaimed the area. It wasn't until 1989, 45 years later, that aviation enthusiasts discovered the wreck, which was astonishingly well preserved. The swamp's low oxygen levels helped protect many parts, including instruments and weaponry. Even the original Luftwaffe camouflage and markings were still visible on the wings, an extremely rare sight for aircraft submerged that long. The discovery stunned historians and offered a unique glimpse into the air war over the Soviet Union, as if the aircraft had just emerged from the past. The plane was recovered and placed on display at the Central Air Force Museum in Monino, Russia. Its exceptional condition stands as a tribute to World War II aviation and reminds us the many untold stories hidden on former battlefields. The Lockheed P-38F. Made of Harlech, is one of Britain's most unusual aircraft finds. A rare American fighter preserved under sand for more than 70 years. On September 27, 1942, U.S. Army Air Forces pilot Robert Elliott was flying a training mission along the Welsh coast when he suffered engine trouble. He executed a forced landing on Harlech Beach on Cardigan Bay. Elliott was unhurt, but shifting tides and dunes soon swallowed the aircraft, and it slipped from memory. The P-38 remained hidden until 2007, when exceptionally low water and coastal erosion revealed the wreck. Nicknamed Made of Harlech after the nearby town, it's one of the few P-38s still lying in situ where it came down. Although it can be seen at rare ultra-low tides, the shifting sands usually cover it again. The Blohm & Voss 238 was the largest aircraft ever built by Nazi Germany and could have been the world's largest operational aircraft had it entered full production. Designed by the Hamburg-based shipbuilding and aircraft manufacturer Blohm & Voss, the BV-238 was an ambitious project. It was a giant flying boat intended for long-range transport, maritime reconnaissance, and possibly even bombing missions. With a wingspan of over 197 feet, or 60 meters, and a weight exceeding 100 tons, the BV-238 was a true airborne giant. Powered by 6 Daimler-Benz DB603 V12 engines, it could carry troops, vehicles, or cargo over vast distances. The fuselage was ship-like for water landings, with multiple stabilizers and high-mounted wings. Technically innovative, it used lightweight alloys and a reinforced internal structure to keep its weight manageable. The only completed version, the V1, first flew in 1944 over the German Schal Lake. Before it could enter military service, it was destroyed by Allied fighter bombers while moored, bringing Nazi Germany's dream of air supremacy to an end. Beneath the icy waters of Hartvik-Vatnet in northern Norway rests one of the best-preserved Junkers Ju-52 transport aircraft of World War II. Nicknamed Tante Ju, the Ju-52 was the Luftwaffe's workhorse, flying paratroops, supply runs, and medical evacuations. During the Norwegian campaign in April 1940, this aircraft diverted amid snow squalls and strong winds and landed on the frozen lake. The crew survived and was recovered, but thawing ice soon pulled the aircraft to the bottom, where it lay undisturbed for more than 60 years. Divers rediscovered the wreck in the early 2000s. Cold, fresh water had slowed corrosion, leaving the corrugated skin, engines, and cockpit instruments remarkably intact. Still bearing Luftwaffe markings and traces of its last mission, the Hartvik-Vatnet Ju-52 is a submerged time capsule from the war's early days. Norway leaves the wreck in situ as a memorial, out of respect for historical integrity and the fragile environment that preserved it so well. During World War II, the G4M Betty was a long-range twin-engine bomber used by the Imperial Japanese Navy. While it was praised for its impressive range and bomb load, it was also notorious for its vulnerability, due to a lack of armor and self-sealing fuel tanks. The Betty played a major role in Japan's aerial campaigns across the Pacific. One of the most haunting remnants of this aircraft can be found on Balalay Island, part of the Shortland Islands near Bougainville and the Solomon Islands. The island was occupied by Japanese forces, who built an airfield there using brutal forced labor and prisoners of war. Several G4M Bettys operated from or passed through Balalay. After heavy Allied bombings and the island's isolation, many aircraft were destroyed or simply abandoned in the jungle. In one particularly striking spot, an almost intact G4M lies, slowly being overtaken by nature. Its fuselage and wings are now cloaked in moss, rust, and even ivy, silent witnesses to the island's violent past. This forgotten relic serves as a ghostly monument to the Japanese Allied and civilian lives lost during the Pacific conflict. Today, the wreck is occasionally visited by military historians, adventurers, and curious tourists. The Heinkel Volksjäger was Nazi Germany's desperate final attempt to achieve air superiority. A jet fighter designed in the last months of the war, it was meant to be produced quickly, cheaply, and in mass quantities, even operated by young or barely trained pilots. Developed under the 1944 Emergency Fighter Program, the HE-162 was a response to the devastating bombings of German cities and industry. The aircraft reached speeds of over 560 miles per hour, or 900 kilometers per hour, making it one of the fastest planes of the war, and was armed with two 0.8 inches or 20 millimeter cannons. Production was extremely rapid, but also sloppy, and the use of non-strategic materials such as wood led to structural weaknesses. These fighters were hastily assembled and barely tested, resulting in numerous mechanical problems. Nevertheless, the concept was futuristic, a small, lightweight jet fighter capable of attacking enemy bombers in large numbers. In theory, even members of the Hitler Youth were supposed to fly it, hence the name People's Fighter. In practice, however, it came far too late and was far too weak to counter an overwhelming enemy. The short Sunderland flying boat was one of Britain's most formidable maritime patrol aircraft of World War II, deadly against U-boats, invaluable to convoys, and built for long sorties over hostile seas. In Norway's Trondheim fjord lies a Sunderland Mark III, unusually well preserved. In April 1943, after a fierce engagement with German fighters during a coastal patrol, the 4-engine giant was hit by cannon fire, made a forced landing on the fjord, and sank quickly. Decades later, divers found fuselage, wings, and even cockpit sections in striking condition in the cold, brackish water. Inside, instruments, gun positions, and navigation gear could still be identified, offering valuable insight into the technology of the time. The discovery shows both the aircraft's rugged design and the risks crews faced, often flying low and slow over enemy waters. Tourists visiting the Micronesian archipelago, Palau, often stumble across traces of a forgotten war. One such discovery came when kayakers found the wreck of a Japanese Aichi E-13A reconnaissance plane, lying upside down in the riverbed, wings spread, as if it's still waiting for its final mission. The wreck's now overgrown with moss and coral, blending seamlessly into Palau's lush tropical landscape. While the site is peaceful today, Palau was once the scene of intense fighting between Japanese and Allied forces, particularly around the island of Peleliu. The aircraft discovery is far from unique. Palau hosts more than 60 wartime wrecks, scattered across its seas, jungles, and caves. Not far from the river lies another near-intact Japanese fighter, hidden in a cave, which is now a popular dive spot. These wrecks are part of what is known as the Lost Fleet of the Rock Islands and draw thousands of divers and history buffs each year. Thanks to its rich underwater heritage, Palau is widely celebrated as the wreck diving capital of the world. Under the dark waters of Loch Ness lies one of the best preserved British World War II aircraft, the Vickers Wellington N2980, affectionately R for Robert. On December 31st, 1940, during a training flight, one engine failed. In the ensuing emergency landing, the crew put the aircraft down on the icy loch. All aboard survived and clambered into dinghies before the Wellington sank. For more than 40 years, R for Robert lay almost untouched, superbly conserved. In 1976, sonar scans of Loch Ness, originally aimed at the famous monster, picked up the wreck. In 1985, the RAF Sub-Aqua Association, working with the Loch Ness Monster Investigation Bureau, raised the aircraft in a landmark feat of underwater archaeology. Thanks to the cold, fresh water, Barnes-Wallis's unique geodetic framework survived in exceptional condition. Now restored at the Brooklands Museum in Surrey, the Wellington offers a rare look at early British bomber engineering, proof of how craftsmanship and natural preservation can keep history alive. R. Reichenberg was Nazi Germany's grim response to desperation, a manned version of the notorious Vi-1 flying bomb, designed for extremely high-risk one-way missions. Based on the Fiesler Fi-103, the Reichenberg retained its signature form, a stubby pulse-jet-powered aircraft with short wings and an explosive warhead in the nose. The Argus AS-014 pulse-jet produced the same piercing howl that made the V weapons infamous. Under the leadership of Otto Skorzeny, Hitler's favorite commando, a special unit was trained, consisting of volunteers from the Luftwaffe and Hitler Youth for these perilous missions. Although officially pilots were supposed to bail out in time, the chances of survival were minimal. The Reichenberg was unstable and extremely difficult to control safely. Test flights with glider models often failed, and even successful landings were highly dangerous. The training process itself was so hazardous that several test pilots died during preparation. As the war progressed and Allied air superiority grew, the project was eventually canceled entirely. Although dozens of pilots were trained, the aircraft was never deployed in combat. On the windswept shores of Atka Island in Alaska lies the rusted wreckage of a B-24D Liberator, a silent remnant of World War II. This heavy bomber, part of the U.S. Army Air Forces, once played a key role in America's defense against Japanese attacks in the Northwest Pacific. However, the Atka plane never saw combat. In 1942, it was forced to make an emergency landing due to engine trouble and has remained at the site ever since. The Aleutian Campaign is often a forgotten chapter of World War II history, but it was a crucial and extremely harsh front, marked by isolation and brutal weather. The B-24D was one of America's most versatile aircraft, capable of carrying heavy bomb loads over long distances. Though the crew survived landing, the aircraft was too difficult to recover in the rugged terrain. Rather than destroy or salvage it, the wreck was simply abandoned on the tundra. Today, the Atka B-24D lies in an eerie state of decay. Its fuselage is twisted by decades of snow, wind, and salty air. Wings and engines are covered in moss, lichens, and nesting seabirds, far from any battlefield or museum. The B-17E Flying Fortress Swamp Ghost is among World War II's most famous and eeriest aircraft wrecks. On February 23, 1942, returning from a raid near Rabaul, the bomber commanded by Captain Frederick Eaton Jr. took flak damage. Low on fuel and too far from base, the crew bellied into the Agayambo Swamp in Papua New Guinea. All 9 men survived and trekked for days through the jungle before rescue. The aircraft remained half-submerged, its olive-drab fuselage preserved surprisingly well by the humid yet low-oxygen environment, becoming a legend among locals and aviation historians. After lengthy negotiations, the wreck was recovered in 2006 and later restored for display at the Pacific Aviation Museum, Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, a haunting relic of the Pacific Air War brought back from the marsh. Have you ever found anything from World War II? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos we've made, click one on the screen or take a look at the channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.